po namin na ang tiwalang ipinagkaloob nyo sa aming tambalan ay magbubunga ng tunay na pagkakaisa.
Professor Edmund Tayo told the chiefs that getting the backing of the Iglesia is not a significant factor in winning elections.
I'm not inclined to think that INC support is the most significant factor, no, in defining the win of a candidate. Kasi hindi naman majority ng 65 million voters ang INC members. Kahit pa Catholic voters, hindi mo din masasabi yan.
One presidential advisor says that President Duterte is indirectly endorsing frontrunner Bongbong Marcos as his successor.
You cannot detach the fact that the PDP Laban has endorsed, no?
Yeah.
And at the same time, the president is the chairman of PDP Laban.
Yeah.
So it goes without saying that the president is actually indirectly endorsing Bongbong Marcos.
Five days before the elections, several religious sectors have declared who they're voting for. But do these endorsements matter to voters? And will these affect the results? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay at kasama po natin online. Nasa Maynila po yan sa port area, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and in Quezon City, Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5. Maya-maya po sasamahan din tayo ni Ed Linggao. Chiefs, good evening.
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 Ami, anong balita?
Kung sinusundan niyo yung mga announcements, yung meeting de avance daw nila Lenny and Kiko sa Makati.
Sabado.
Oo, yan.
Ang meeting de avance naman ng kabilang kampo, saan?
Yun ang hindi ko.
Parang wala pa silang ina-announce. Pero inumpisahan nila series, no? Serye. Yeah. So, it started in Iloilo, I think, yesterday. Basta, sunod-sunod na. Pero itong pinaplano nila Lenny and Kiko on Saturday, ang layon daw nila, 1 million eh.
Oo.
So,
In the
sarap din
meantime,
pag-usapan kung may epekto ba yun. I mean,
Oo.
even assuming, di ba, na that
In
they
the-
muster the numbers.
in the meantime,
Diba,
nakita mo
would that
yung...
really have an effect?
In the meantime, nakita niyo yung latest videos nung dalawa na pinalabas sa social media. Both of them trying to really project. Parang gusto mo nang, parang nai-imagine mo na, ganito itsura nito pagka naging presidente, no?
Oo.
We're taking it there. But so let's take that as our segue to bring in our guest, a political analyst and columnist Richard Heydarian. Good evening and welcome once again, Mr. Heydarian.
Good evening.
Pleasure as
Richard.
always. Kamusta mo kayo dyan? Malapit na. Ito
Malapit na
Final
talaga.
stretch.
Gusto kong tanongin si...
Teka, aminin mo na. Sabi mo kanina, ha? Meron ka nang inaamin, ha?
Ayan tayo eh.
Sinabi
Medyo
ko pa,
banter na yan.
Wag muna. Gusto kong tanongin si Mr. Heydarian tungkol sa survey, kung naniniwala siya, pero wag muna tayo, baka tuldukan ka agad yung usapan natin eh. So
Usapan yan.
No, I wanna start with this. Ganito na lang. Because everybody's looking at the surveys, parang bukod pa sa magkaroon ng hidwaan sa kandidato eh. Sa survey pa lang, nagkakahidwaan na eh. So mamaya, wag muna natin yun ang pag-usapan natin. But I do want to ask you, apart from who's going to win for president and vice president and senator, what else are you keen to find out on election day?
Well, I mean, una-una itong sasabihin ko, I think, pagdating sa opposition, hindi lang dapat issue dito yung whether mananalo sila or hindi. I think the margins matter. I've always argued that should the next president be the first majority-based president, I think medyo maging iba yung kanyang sense of destiny kumpara sa isang president na perhaps gets the usual plurality of votes. Let's not forget, the last time na mayroon tayong presidente who got the majority of votes in a relatively competitive election was in 1969, and alam natin another Marcos was on the ballot. So I think if this time the son manages to pull off something similar, who knows, baka yung magiging ambition niya, political ambitions niya, will be even more than otherwise. So I think margins is something that matters. Another thing I also watch out here yung Senate race. I think masyado natin pinag-usapan yung vice presidency, presidency. But the Senate race, if you look at it, mukhang yung mga allied sa opposition, progressive candidates, a lot of them are struggling. I think the only one I see that was
Rizal Tiveros.
consistently within the margin is Rizal Tiveros. Yeah. So I think that's the other thing you have to keep in mind. Kaya nga sabi ko, even if manalo si Lenny, and then of course anything is possible, she could face quite a hostile Senate and Congress, right? Dahil sobrang mukhang marami dyan mga progressive candidates, they're not doing as well. So I think many people are too obsessed about the presidential race. They forget the fact that for an effective administration to happen, dapat magkaroon tayo ng synergy or a certain degree of same wavelength dapat yung executive and legislative. So yun din ang pinapanood ko dyan. But of course, millennial ako, so kami yung mga medyo bata in the previous elections. This time, I'm really looking forward to Generation Z. I want to see yung Generation Z nakaka-capture ba ng surveys, yung kanilang tendencies. We have seen a lot of studies that are suggesting that perhaps yung certain candidates who are very active on TikTok, with their nostalgic, cool kind of messaging is doing well among the Gen Z. But I want to see the exit polls. Kasi hanggang makikita ko yung exit polls and all, I think it's a little bit too premature to judge how certain generations are going to vote in these elections. Let's not forget, in the 2016 elections, the millennials actually were less enthusiastic with the Bongbong Marcos vice presidency than people at 55 and above. So actually, the millennials were one big reason na nanalo si Lenny, but of course by a very thin margin. This time, ang tinitignan ko dito is Gen Z, the next generation naman, dahil hindi na kami bata eh.
Okay.
So do you think there's basis for the observation that the surveys might not be really reflecting what could actually be the final results of the votes, considering now that the youth vote was underrepresented? What do you think of the surveys?
Yeah, yun nga eh. So,
Of that?
Yeah, kaya nga ako, ang approach ko dito is always combine qualitative studies with quantitative studies. Yung mga ethnographic studies na ginawa ng sociologists, ng mga political scientists. Hindi ko lang tinitignan ano yung sinasabi ng mga statistician, mathematician, right? Because sometimes people come up with their own alternative data, but they're based on very questionable sociological assumptions. For instance, one of the things I keep on hearing is this. Parang the assumption is, pag mas mataas yung level of education mo at kung level A or B ka in terms of economic, socio-economic, demographic, then siguro mas layo, mas panig ka doon sa opposition kaysa sa BBM side. I'm not sure that's backed up by ethnographic studies and sociological studies. In fact, a lot of studies, let's just put aside the surveys, no? A lot of studies are showing that more and more of upper class and upper middle class Filipinos want a disciplinarian leader, no? To create, ang tawag ko nga dyan, Singapore envy eh. Marami sa atin nakapunta sa Singapore, tingnan mo yung Singapore, napakaganda, yung government nila, hindi ganun ka-democratic, so baka yun din ang kailangan natin. So let's not forget that actually a lot of studies show even our upper and more educated Filipino demographics are also leaning and more towards authoritarian leaders. So those are the numbers I'm looking, not just the surveys.
Okay.
Not to mention, Pew survey showed in 2017 and 2020 that only 15 to 20% of Filipinos were categorically committed sa liberal democracy. So 30, 50, 60% even of Filipinos, based on some of numbers I've seen by World Value Survey, Pew survey show that many Filipinos are ambivalent, not necessarily pro-authoritarian, but not necessarily also excited with liberal democratic. Kaya nga this race could have been won by a centrist candidate, or this race was actually potentially much more open than what's it's turning out to be, at least based on some of the surveys. Now, speaking of surveys, sorry, nagdadala ko, but I have to say this kasi sensitive tong topic na to. So all surveys are not the same, right? Some of them belong to more established institutions. My track record, for instance, SWS and Pulse Asia, no offense to others, but SWS and Pulse Asia, they have a track record. Pulse Asia correctly predicted in 2016 yung pagkapanalo ni Lenny in that very, very, very thin margin. Yung Noibi, Binay, Pinoy, nag-predict din ng Pulse Asia in 2010, no? So for me, yung mga itong blue chip survey agencies, I look at them more carefully and all. And in fairness, we can have methodological debates. Pero ako, I'm not very happy dun sa mga personal attack, dun sa mga integrity ng mga tao. Especially people like my colleagues in LaSalle, formerly Ronald Holmes, Dr. Ronald Holmes. Ito yung mga world-class political scientists at saka mga people na alam nila yung ginagawa nila. So for me, you may disagree with the survey's assumption and all, but walang personalan. And as I said, even some of the other surveys I've seen, wala akong data sa Pulse Asia, but I've seen other surveys that say baka 20 to 30% can still change their mind towards the end of the race. No? So remember, yung Pulse Asia na-cover niya, I think, until April 21. So that's 2 weeks left pa. No? So it is still possible for some of the people to change their mind in the last week or so. That's why I'm saying nothing is set in stone. The problem, though, is the gap is quite big. No? When the gap is that big, even if my error ka sa surveys, right, then it's still, it's going to be really a difficult fight for certain camps compared to the others. But tignan mo, even yung mga Bongbong Marcos camp, pag tinignan mo yung mga statements nila, Attorney Rodriguez, parating sinasabi nila hindi kami complacent, hindi kami kampante, because they also realize there is still some fluidity in this race, although that fluidity has been diminishing. Sorry, medyo madaldal ako, but I had to say those things kasi mahirap na ngayon eh. Medyo maraming nag-misunderstand sa mga sinasabi natin eh.
So what about the endorsement naman ng INC? Although it's expected that they would go for Marcos.
Right.
Pero you think at this point, they still carry a lot of weight? In fact, may mga naglalabasang member ng INC, although we're not sure kung how accurate that is, na hindi nga daw sila papayag na to go along with the group in voting as a bloc. You think it matters at this point?
I mean, block voting in general show that maybe it's not as block voting. That sometimes it's like maybe 50%, 60%. But when, of course, you have huge organization, millions pa rin ang pinag-usapan. But let's not forget in 2016, we saw a similar situation. Marcos They got the endorsement from certain block voting religious groups, and yet Lenny still pulled off, right? So I think to reduce the race to just saying na, parang ito you can say they're like the swing states dun sa US elections, but hindi naman parati isang swing state lang ang mag-decide. Sometimes even Florida cannot decide. I mean, Trump won Florida in 2020, and yet he lost the race big time, right, to Biden. So I think they are important, but let's not exaggerate also the importance of certain groups. And also, let's not take it on face value na 100% na maging compliant. So I think there will be some people who will vote in a different direction. But as I said, I'm totally unsurprised with the vote of some of these groups because it's consistent dun sa pattern nila in 2016 and previous elections, and not to mention 2019. So I'm not surprised.
What about the president's lack of endorsement? Does that even matter now? Will that change things, even assuming that he did endorse? I mean, although may mga nagsasabi na alam naman natin kung ano daw talaga ang ini-endorse, sino raw talaga ang ini-endorse ni President. What do you think of that?
I think the ship has sailed. Really, the ship sailed for the Dutertes, both father and daughter, in terms of the, pinaka-high stakes, no? Nung essentially October. I think by October, I've written on that for Monocle, for Nikkei, among others, na Marcos will be the front runner. Noon pa lang sinabi ko. Kasi the moment that Sara did not run for the presidency, yung 30 points ni Sara ay napunta kay BBM. So, let's not forget, Lenny is not against BBM. Lenny is against BBM plus votes of Sara. Kaya ang laki ng vote ni BBM, di ba? That's why believable sa akin some of these numbers because I know that's a Sara number. Now, where it gets interesting is if sana, for the opposition or others, nag-work yung kanilang strategy of meron tayong isa, di ba? Isko, Sara, meron tayong Rosa. That was potentially one curveball. But again, I'm not seeing that reflected in the surveys. But that could have been a curveball. Kasi alam natin, marami dyan, gusto nila si Sara manalo, second choice nila si Bongbong. But nakita natin si President Duterte hindi rin masyadong natuwa sa nangyari. I mean, I think he told one blogger, right, na parang anak ko, I don't know if he used the term bully or coerce or something. Basta dapat yung anak kong tumakbo mananalo siya. And I kind of agree with President Duterte. I think if Sara ran, she had a very good chance of becoming the next president. And that's a big mystery. Why didn't she run for the presidency? I know there are a lot of stories about that. We can debate about that. But so BBM is really benefiting from Sara withdrawing from this race. And President Duterte knew that his daughter had very good chance. I mean, look at the vice presidential race. Yeah. It's even more tilted in favor of the front runner than the presidential race. So Sara is really the dominant force in these elections. So by extension, President Duterte should have been dominant. But I think dapat November, October pa lang nag-endorse na siya ng someone or he made the move. But I think by now, it's a question of formality. So matalino naman si Digong nagets niya na better not say anything and have this above the fray image than try to say something which will not make any difference naman anyway. I don't think it will make much difference at this point.
Yeah, Professor.
I mean, I think certain camps like Isko camp were hoping they get Digong's endorsement, they carry Davao, they carry Muslim votes, right? Because we saw the Muslim vote eventually a lot of them went to Lenny, right? But I think a lot of them could have been open also to Isko if Isko was the viable alternative. But it didn't happen for some reason. I don't know the backstory. I'm not going to pretend. Yeah. But I knew that was the strategy. Isko gets Duterte's endorsement, splits Mindanao, and then a lot of more conservative authoritarian vote, populist vote must split between the two. Then Lenny could come from the other side with 20, 30. Then it could have been a competitive three-way race. That was what I keep on saying. This could have been a three-way or 2.5 points race. But Isko, for some reason, somewhere along the way, it just went off the rail, no? And the latest numbers are like 4 points. I mean, mind-boggling. So a lot of this is because Isko didn't do as well, and Sara's numbers were absorbed by BBM. This is not just BBM's numbers. He was only 13 points, 15 points last year before Sara backed out. Everyone forgets that. Solid lahat. He was only 13%.
Professor, we'll have a lot of time to talk a bit more about Isko later on in the show, but I still want to focus on the top two. Kanina, you were starting to build one scenario. You said it would be interesting to see if Lenny wins and you have the Senate emerging as the survey seems to be suggesting. But I'll be the one to say it, and this, I guess, by way of acknowledging the surveys, that's a very, very big if. So I want to get into the other more plausible scenario. You're now looking at a Marcos presidency with a Senate and a Congress that to paint it with a broad brush will not have that much of an opposition. So what is the
Right.
prospect for
Yeah.
what is the prospect for our institutions and our democracy and our government
Right.
if in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, alam niyo naman, there's a term in political science, if you only know one country, you know no country, right? So one of the things I always do is to compare Philippines dun sa mga bansa na katulad natin, na medyo problematic din and all. Now, if pumunta ka lang sa mga kapitbahay natin, look at countries like Malaysia or even Singapore, right? They have elections, but we know who is more or less going to win these elections, right? There's one dominant coalition that keeps on winning elections with a slight exceptions here and there in the case of Malaysia in 2018, diba? Now, I can give you another examples. I think Turkey is another interesting example. They have a populist authoritarian leader. Their elections sometimes competitive, but at the end of the day, we know what's going to happen there. Who is the dominant force? Ang tawag sa mga ganitong bansa ay hybrid regimes. So they have elections, a little bit competitive, but overall, it's an illiberal, more or less authoritarian system. I think there is a tendency for the Philippines to move in that direction if the opposition gets completely decimated in these elections, right? And we already had a foretaste of that in 2019, except patapos na si President Duterte. And of course, President Duterte, I don't think he has had the discipline and wherewithal to really push things over the cliff. But I think if Marcos wins, he'll start fresh. He's relatively young. His mandate could be very big, right? And then there's also Sara there. So I think together, at the very least, itong aking prognosis, we're gonna move seriously towards constitutional change. I think the first 3 years of a potential Marcos Sara Duterte presidency. Muntik ako nag-slip doon of a potential, right, or prospective presidency.
Okay.
So
Towards
yes,
what?
I think
Towards what?
constitutional change is going to be.
Towards what direction? Federalism,
Yeah.
shift to parliamentary. What kind of shift exactly are you looking at?
Right. So that will depend on internal dynamics ng ruling coalition, no? Now, obviously, if Marcos wins, at the very least he wants 6 years in power, right? Now, if he can change the constitution to make it more, then better be it. Now, he has the option for presidential parliamentary, katulad ng meron sa South Korea, for instance, or katulad sa Turkey or France, right? Kung saan meron kang president, pero meron ka rin prime minister. So maybe in that situation, Sara could be the prime minister, right? And then Bongbong could be the president, right? So it will depend on the internal discussions we'll have. So in short, President Duterte's term was a foretaste of what could come if the opposition doesn't recover. And so if opposition repeats what happened in 2019, then I think the field is very open for a Marcos Duterte tandem to essentially push it over the cliff and create essentially a new political system.
Okay,
altogether.
but when
So
that,
I think this is the big.
Aren't there
Right.
we hear that she was the one who was actually brokering a Sara Bongbong tandem instead of the other way around, but at the last minute bigla na bago yon, di ba? But she's not going to just disappear into the black when they win, di ba? So if it turns to, say, parliamentary, sino yung you think that these people who still want to be in power somehow and want to share power will just take it as it is, na parang now President
I know the
Bongbong.
argument there, Lucci, right? That it will be a conflict. I mean, it will be a competition of conflicting interests among themselves, and that's why may politika pa rin tayo. Even if mawala yung opposition, may politika pa rin eh. Tuloy-tuloy yan. Now, the thing with former President Arroyo is that I think she will be the eminence gros. She has been that under President Duterte. She's one of the top advisors to President Duterte on foreign policy and China issues. I know that. I interviewed her a few years ago on that issue. And the other thing is, she became a Speaker of the House, but it was a very tough process for her because she's very influential in the backdoor, right? Negotiations and all. But her political capital in the public is not as much, right? I think ito yung medyo yung kapos sa kanya, no? Kay President Arroyo. I think she's very influential among politicians, but in the public, we know she's the most unpopular president we have had on record, right? I mean, net negative na yung numbers niya, no? So yun yung magiging problem sa kanya if she wants to push it for prime minister or something like that. Sara will not have that problem because Sara is going to come in potentially very strong, right? She has the solid South behind her, so she will negotiate for a tough position. But as I said, I mean,
But will this be an easy ride I think. I mean, that's my question. This is not going to be easy also, considering that there will be political interests that will be run over, no, kumbaga, by this kind of change, right?
So maraming horse trading ang mangyari dyan, which we have to watch out. Kaya nga yung tanong kanina, magiging ano ba tayo? Federal ba tayo? Presidential no, that will be part of the negotiation. I don't think it will be based on what is necessarily best for the country. It will be based on spoils of wars distribution. Let's just be brutally honest about this. No. Now, let me just say this. That's why I'm saying, even if the opposition, even if they don't win, right? If they sustain a strong movement, kasi ito yung problema natin in 2016, di ba, Luchi? Nung natalo na yung Liberal Party and opposition, nawala. Yung isang leader ng opposition, I don't know, nag-yoga na or something, whatever. Wala na leader of opposition. And then no offense, right? I mean, do your yoga, no problem, sir. Okay, enjoy, good. I do yoga too. So Lenny was left to pick up, essentially. But Lenny was new, diba? She was an outsider too. So it took her a long time to build that kind of really confidence and all that we're beginning to see now. So if Lenny becomes a solid leader, which she was not in the beginning, let's be honest, she couldn't just be that. She was not ready for it talaga. I don't want to make an excuse, but let's just be honest about it. She was not, but she's now in that position that even if she loses, even if she loses, okay, let me clarify that. If she continues to create a strong movement, that movement can restrain the worst instincts of any hegemonic coalition that could emerge out of these elections. Kaya nga sabi ko dapat ang game plan ng opposition is not only thinking about this election, but the day after. And as I said, even if manalo si Lenny, she could face a very hostile Congress or Senate dominated by the other side. So she will still need a strong movement. Regardless, either way, Lenny desperately needs a strong movement. And we saw she can do it. I won't be surprised. There will indeed be a million-strong meeting de avance. And that meeting de avance should be essentially declaration of the beginning of a new movement altogether, separate from we know what, right?
So separate from the liberals, separate from the yellow movement, separate from the entire history of the yellows, maybe marking, I mean, that's what you mean.
New juncture.
Okay. Sige.
New juncture.
Okay, fascinating stuff.
Kaya nga
And
diba?
unfortunately, we don't have that much any more time for this segment. We'd like to thank again Professor Richard Heydarian. Maraming salamat. Looking forward to more conversations heading into the elections and beyond.
Yes, we will see you on May 9.
Yeah, on election day. Let's break it down.
Sige.
All right.
All right.
Okay, I'm not going to say more. Medyo,
Sige.
nako po. Delikado
Maraming
tayo.
salamat.
God bless.
Maraming
Thank you very
salamat.
much.
That
Catch
is
you guys
Professor
soon.
Richard
Pahinga na
Heydarian.
kayo.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs, here on One News. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama pa rin po natin si Ami Pamintuan at si Lucy Cruz Valdez. At kasama na rin po natin ngayon si Ed Lingao of One News. Bok, welcome.
Happy midweek.
And kasama natin ngayon, Ernest Ramel, Chairperson of Aksyon Demokratiko. Good evening and welcome to the Chiefs, Mr. Ramel.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and I'm glad to be back on your program.
Welcome back, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Salamat po, pinaunlakan nyo kami kahit pa nasa gitna kayo ng traffic.
As always.
Hindi naman kayo nagmamaneho, ha?
Hindi naman po.
Okay.
We're safe.
Sige.
Kung matikitan kayo, hindi namin sasagutin niyo.
Yan na lang po natin. Less than a week po. Less than a week before the elections. Kamusta po ang inyong kandidato, si Isko Moreno? At diretso na po natin. Wala na po tayong inaabangang sorpresa sa kampo ninyo in the next few days?
Well, he's been going around. He's in Cebu today. Tomorrow he'll be in Leyte. And, well, we'll have our meeting de avance on Saturday. But as far as surprises is concerned, I think we have one more by tomorrow or Friday.
Oh, really?
Ha? Ano yun, sir?
Ano yun? Bigyan ka nun eh.
Ano yung surprise na yun? Atin-atin lang.
Sir, timely mo lang naman eh.
Wala na
Yeah,
nakakainig, tayo lang.
I think it's about the 203 billion case still.
The estate tax liabilities.
Yes, the estate tax will be filing a case probably before the Supreme Court.
Sir, what kind of a case? Sorry, sir, we're not lawyers, pero what kind of a case are you looking at? Kasi
I'm not a lawyer myself, but according to our lawyers, it's a writ of mandamus.
a mandamus, which is to enforce the ruling ba? Is that what it is?
That's right. To enforce the ruling, yes.
Pero sir, if you do try to enforce the ruling, are you trying to enforce the ruling by the government or enforce the ruling on the Marcoses? Kasi you have two schools of thought eh. One school of thought is that ang gobyerno yung medyo mabagal sa pagkokolekta. The other school of thought, of course, is that ang mga Marcoses ang ayaw magbayad.
Right. It will be a writ of mandamus on the BIR for them to be compelled to collect.
Okay.
May bibigay ba kayong timetable?
Hopefully tomorrow we'll do it or at most on Friday.
No, I mean the collection. Kasi
As to the collection, no, of course we'll just compel them, but we'll wait for whatever the courts will decide on the said case.
So, kumusta naman yung kampanya ngayon? How is it going? Kasi itong latest ng Pulse Asia, lalong, well, he slipped in the ratings, no? Kumusta po yung kandidato?
Well, he's still in high spirits. In fact, we were so, I find it ridiculous that we're at 4%. That means if there will be a 65 million voters and 80% turnout, it's just getting 2 million votes. Come on, are you kidding me? That's far from the truth. In fact, the same survey, again, I'll refer to Tangere, same survey done around the same time that Pulse did it. Mayor Isko was faring better at 20%. So,
Ang laki nun, Na-mute
percent. No? So Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is at 51. So certainly Mayor Isko's number is not 4%. That's for sure.
Yung INC endorsements, you think that's not a factor? Kasi they're counting about 2 million votes. You think?
Yeah, it's always.
Naka-mute po yata kayo.
Nagsichoppy siya eh.
To be
Nag-choppy.
honest, at the start with
Yes.
him. To be honest, that's how I saw things.
Well, sir,
Sir Ramel, you will have to repeat what you said because we hardly heard you.
No, I'm saying is the INC endorsement. When Marcos filed his certificate of candidacy, personally, I already gave that endorsement to him. That's how I saw things.
Well, sir, referring back to the surveys, kasi you have two completely different methodologies involved here.
That's right.
Pulse Asia, of course, with its own random sampling, and Tangere,
Right.
which uses an application. In other words, you have to download the app and so on down the
It
line.
uses an application, but it also does random sampling amongst more than 600,000 of its subscribers nationwide, among different classes, among different age demographics as well, all over the Philippines. So it's the sampling is quite the same as what Pulse Asia or SWA.
Yes, sir. But, sir, what I mean is that the precursor premise is that you have to want to download the application first, and that starts
That's
the ball
right.
rolling.
I
Which
understand. Yes, that's right.
Which is
That
completely
you
different
have to
from
download the application first, but then again, it has more than 600,000 subscriber base nationwide that has that uses the same demographics as what Pulse and SWS do.
So you're putting greater weight on the Tangere findings than on the Pulse Asia
I don't
findings.
wanna be so just because we're getting a very we're getting better results with Tangere. I'm not putting weight there per se, but what I'm saying is as our campaign strategist Tito Binaya had been saying that the Pulse Asia's survey may have been tainted because it's being outsourced, right? And recently they outsourced this to some new companies that haven't been tried and tested for a while.
So ano yung
Discussions nyo internally, as far as the effect of the Manila Peninsula press con declaration on
Right.
this latest survey, do you think there's a relationship between the two?
Right.
I mean, yung pagbagsak to fourth place.
I really don't see the correlation because after that, our base just really got fired up. And those who were angry or ranting against us on social media weren't ours to begin with. These are mostly the supporters of the vice president. No? So we didn't see that there was a backlash on Mayor Sco on the so-called Easter Sunday press con. No? So we felt that it fired up our base. We reached the message that we wanted to get across got across to the people that we wanted to hear them.
What about Mayor Isko has been open about hoping for an endorsement from President Duterte, pero sabi ni Presidente, kahit hanggang Disyembre daw, hindi na siya mag-i-endorse. Anong reaction ni Mayor Isko?
I think that ship has sailed months ago. We actually, like I said before with other interviews, that if and when the president does that, it will be just a bonus. But then again, I wasn't counting on it myself because of his body language towards an endorsement. So, that ship has sailed months ago, I think.
Mayor Isko also referred to a secret, silent following numbering about 16 million. But he didn't reveal what group that was. Any ideas now? Because it's never been followed through. I mean, what was that about?
Well, there was a few days ago, I think a week ago, there was an event at the Aberdeen Hotel where we called it the Big Switch or the Biggest Switch, where numerous groups with a good number of followers nationwide switched to Mayor Isko, no? And some of one of the groups, I really don't know this group personally, but they boasted of membership of around 8 or 10 million, and so much more groups also joined and were part of that program. So probably I wouldn't want to play so much on these groups, no. But the silent majority that Mayor Isko is talking about are really the people on the ground. Because anywhere and everywhere he goes, you could feel that people are really drawn to him. People really like him. They are warm to him. So he could really feel that there's a silent majority right there. And even now, I'm getting a lot of messages from different people from different places in the country, and they are saying that we are just silent. Even our volunteer organizations campaigning on the ground, they're saying just this afternoon, a group campaigned in Las Piñas, and they were so surprised with the reception, even without the candidate, that people are really approaching them, asking for campaign materials, more flyers, shirts, because they wanted to know more about ISKCO. They are for ISKCO. They wanted more tarpaulins that they could put on their respective homes. So I think there's really a silent majority out there, and Mayor ISKCO might just pull up a surprise on May 9. This is just 2.2. This is our local experiences, at least. No, Mayor ISKCO, when he ran in 2019, I think a few weeks before the elections, he was number 3 with 20%, and I think Mayor Lim, the late Mayor Lim, was 24%, and Erap then was around 45%. And then on election day, Mayor ISKCO won. You could also glean the same thing with Pasig, the Pasig experience. I think a week before the elections, Vico Soto was just doing 33%, and Eusebio was doing 67%. But the reverse happened on election day. So I think people are just silent, and they just want to go to the polls and then make their votes known by then.
Okay, Mr. Ramel, notwithstanding what a lot of groups are banking on, that there is such a thing as a silent majority. I won't quibble and we won't debate you on which
okay.
which surveys you wanna follow. Obviously, you have made your choice internally on which surveys matter to you the most.
Right.
But I'm just curious on the strategy and the insights that you're getting based on your own numbers na rin. Because there was a time when maybe this is just to quickly encapsulate how we perceived it. Nung una, nasa gitna si ISKCO, sinasabi niya, hindi ako pula, hindi ako dilaw, nandito ako, I offer myself as a middle of the path alternative. Fast forward to that, he was looking for the endorsement of President Duterte. Fast forward some more, that Manila Pen press con, and for a time that was clear. And before that pala, you raised the matter of the estate taxes on Bongbong Marcos. So that was somewhat positioning on this side, and then biglang bumanat kay Leni Robredo for a time after the Manila Pen. That was all we were hearing from ISKCO, really attacking Leni Robredo. And now, tomorrow, we're expecting another case against Bongbong Marcos. I'm just curious, based on your internal analysis, where are you getting votes from? If you trust your numbers, that your numbers are going up, where are your votes coming from?
Well, first let me just correct or disabuse your mind about him attacking Bongbong, him attacking Leni, him being on the middle. Right from the start, when ISKCO joined Action Democratico and we've been doing sorties, he's consistently saying that he's the alternative for the red camp and the yellow-pink camp. He's been consistent in all of the sorties. And every time he says that to the public, every time he says that to those who attend his sorties. So he's been very consistent about that. As to where we're getting, where do we think we're getting our votes? I think number one, we're getting our votes from those people who are sick and tired of this polarization. Number two, we also see that there's a cap on the number of the vice president. We look for the past few weeks. She's been drawing huge crowds. She got a bump of 9% from 16 to 24. But in the latest survey, she dropped by a single percentage. So parang she's stuck there. I think that's already her number. So there's a cap in the vice president.
Just to be clear, you're quoting Pulse Asia again.
Well, yes, but also with Tangere, it's the same. She has a cap. She has reached has as high as 22 with Tangere, but she's gone down now to 18. So she's playing between those numbers, 18 to 22.
So now you're preparing for the meeting de avance. Ano yung main message niya? Because that's the final stretch. Ano yung final message ni Mayor Isko?
I think sorry, Amy. I think his final message will be: if you're tired of the polarization of this country for the longest time, for 30, 40 years, between the Marcoses and the Yellows or the Liberal Party, I am the alternative. I am your candidate. I'm here. I'm present here. I'm an applicant for president. So that will continue to be his message, and I think that message has resonated to a lot of Filipinos out there.
Sir, before we let you go, let me go back to the estate tax issue that you
Right.
intend to pursue tomorrow. Did I understand you correctly? It's a writ of mandamus that you intend to file with the Supreme Court.
I've seen the draft, yes, but it's a writ of mandamus. As of this afternoon, I briefly discussed with our legal team where we are going to file it. No? But we're finalizing things. Probably by tomorrow, everything will be finalized, and probably it will be filed within the day, tomorrow or on Friday.
Yes, sir. I suppose it's to force the BIR into implementing its demand of payment for the estate tax.
That is correct, because at least it's already there. Even if by a stroke of luck the front runner now in the race wins the election, at least there's already a case filed there, and hopefully the courts will continue to pursue it, even if it's if he's lucky to be president.
Oh, so that's why you're filing it in the next 2 days. Kailangan maunahan yung eleksyon.
We're hopeful that, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, to follow up on that, what would make that different from the demand letters that the BIR has been sending to the Marcos family in the last few years? Like in December, they sent another demand letter in response to your question.
Right. But
What
we
would make it
felt
different?
that, sorry to interrupt, we felt that the demand letter isn't enough, or the letters that they've been sending over the past few years aren't enough. We're getting different with all its might. It's all the law's might behind it.
And that includes garnishing properties, for example.
That's right. That includes garnishing
So,
properties.
hindi lang yan magbayad ka, kundi, di ba,
Correct.
parang garnishing.
Garnishing their properties, their bank accounts. If they have a lot of bank accounts that could be traced or named after their family members.
And just to be clear, the theory here is that this is a mandamus. This is to compel the execution on an existing decision. So quite distinct from a immunity from suit from a theoretical President Marcos.
I'm sorry. I didn't
Diba?
hear
Parang,
sir.
wala ito. This totally will be unaffected on the assumption that Bongbong Marcos could become president, and if he becomes president, a writ of mandamus totally the immunity of suit from a president. The immunity of suit from a president is a totally separate issue from a writ of mandamus on your family.
That's right. We see this, that it will be free from the possible immunity of a would-be president or a president by then.
Okay. Abangan po namin yan. Bukas ba, sabi nyo?
At most Friday.
Yan.
Tapos, sir, Supreme Court, RTC, CA.
I cannot say just yet.
Okay.
No, sige. Ganda ng secret natin, ano?
Tayo lang naman nandito eh.
Tayo lang yan.
Magandang kausap na opera record to si Mr. Ramel eh.
And that's more than...
So, diyan kita pangalanan.
Okay. Wala magtutweet ha, wala magtutweet. Okay. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Ernesto Ramel
Maraming
of
salamat
the
din po
Action
sa inyo.
Thank you,
Democratic
sir.
Thank you, sir.
And that will be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez, News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.